I was born in Oakland, California. My dad was in the Air Force, so we moved to Japan for 3 years. There was a guy there in probably 1957 who said, "I've got to show you something." He goes into the house, he gets a 45 record, and he goes, "This is called rock and roll." And this guy is called Elvis Presley. You ain't nothing but... Puts it on, "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog." Blew my mind, and I went, yes. And I think that was the first exposure to rock and roll I ever had. These look like somebody I used to know. From Japan, we moved to Long Beach. Music is a big part of my life. I quickly found KDAY, K-Day. And I was hearing all this R&B music that just totally hit a nerve center again. Etta James, Gene Chandler doing Duke of Earl. It was so great to get that kind of foundation for me. I knew I wanted to immerse myself in music. Berkeley in the late 60s was a melting pot for all the liberal energy in the whole nation. And I was involved with the anti-Vietnam War marches and the People's Park marches. You all had in common that you were part of this new counterculture. Going to school there as well as living up there, I was immersed in that 60s psychedelic rock. And then I went and saw a movie at the Northside Theater in Berkeley that changed my life. And then the harder they come, the harder they fall. The harder they come. Jimmy Cliff. Who's the Batman? Who can draw? And I first heard reggae and I went, this is earthy, this is rootsy stuff. I started immersing myself into reggae. I moved back down to L.A. I went down to South Central. I joined a band that ended up being the premier L.A. reggae group called the Babylon Warriors. And we ended up playing with UB40. We opened up for Black Uhuru. We opened up for the Go-Go's, the Chili Peppers. We played the Palladium. We played the Whiskey. We played the Roxy. I felt that we should have gone to Europe, and I think we would have had a good shot at becoming more of a force. I had made a few friendships with guys from LA, and one of them was an artist named Fred Abrams. He did a piece which was a map of the entire Paris Metro in stained glass, maybe 15 feet long and 12 feet high. It was great. And I needed a place to stay, and he said, there's a whole art scene going on downtown, and there's a loft that I'm renting, and I work there during the day, so you could live there at night since you're working and I won't be there. This was at 240 South Broadway in the Victor Clothing Building. Linda Burnham ran High Performance magazine from the 4th floor. On the 3rd floor was the Lace Performance Art, so I would see the Kipper Kids, Paul McCarthy, different performance artists that were there. So I was exposed right away to the art world downtown, and you have these giant windows looking out over the city, raised stairs up to a bed. I was in a 4-star loft. We would have parties up there as well. And I remember this one time, this guy that showed up, no one knew who he was, this African-American guy, in a tux with a top hat. And he's walking around with a big bottle of champagne. And by the end of the night, he's disappeared. The next morning, I go downstairs and see him in the back of a cop car, handcuffed. And I found out from the cops, well, he broke into the Victor Clothing bridal shop, took the bottle of champagne that was in the window, that's been in the window for over 5 years, and ate the wedding cake, which has been in the window over 10 years, and took one of the tuxes, along with the top hat, and joined the party. If you didn't see it, you wouldn't have believed it. We decided to have dinner by the men's central jail at a place called Denny's Restaurant. And this is my first exposure with east of Alameda. We get in the restaurant, and there's a whole table of LA cops, maybe 6 guys eating, talking amongst themselves. Meanwhile, I'm at the back of the restaurant, and I can see the front door. In walks a guy that looked like the Unabomber with a big beard, except that he was totally naked. And he was walking through the restaurant to get to the other end, and he was very determined. The waitresses were kind of, well, no, you can't come in, please. And they got him out of the restaurant. 5 minutes later, he comes back again, even more determined. One of the waitresses comes over to the police and says, "You've got to do something, officers. There's a naked man that won't leave the restaurant." A couple guys stretch and get up and walk over and say, "So, where are you going, buddy? Going to the beach?" I just thought, okay, I'm here. I'm where I need to be. I'm downtown. I've always had a childhood dream. I saw myself never owning a home, but living in a hotel. I thought it would be like maybe London, Paris, or New York, but it ended up being downtown L.A., and I think it worked out great. So we went over to the American Hotel, and the only thing that was left was a double. Well, I didn't want to be in a dormitory, with another guy, but my friend said, "I have these giant rugs that'll go from the ceiling to the floor, and it'll be like completely divided space." I said, "Great." So I'm in this room. My friend, Byron O'Hara, is on one side of the rugs, and I'm on the other side. And I had a young lady come visit and spend the night. And as she gets up out of bed, she goes to lean on the wall. And I said, "Oh, no, don't do that. That's not really a wall. That's just a rug." She goes, "Well, what's on the other side?" I go, "Well, there's another guy that lives over there." And she goes, "There's another guy?" I said, "Hey, Byron." He goes, "Yeah," like a foot away. Finally, drywalled much later, but events like that were very common in the hotel.
There's a place called American Hotel. It's in downtown L.A. It's like a wishing well.
When you tell someone that you live downtown, they just think, "Oh, it's Skid Row." I said, "No, this is the artist district." So they would think, "Oh, well, that sounds very classy." And American Hotel is anything but. It's more like a boarding house. There's no kitchen, and the bathrooms and showers are on either end of the hall. Before cell phones, the way people got a hold of me was my room faced the front of the hotel. So people would just yell up, and I would open the curtain of the window and see who it was, and then come down. So that was my phone. I call it more of a cowboy barn, but I love it, and I always have. In the early 1980s in the American Hotel, life was very different than it is now. It was a lot more wild and woolly. You would hear gunshots. Repeatedly, people's cars were broken into, batteries were stolen. It didn't feel like a very safe neighborhood. Between Alameda and the river, it was like this no man's land. At night, you would hear crickets. It was like a desert. It was this empty void. But then again, lurking in the corners and the alleys and in the shadows could be any number of street people that were very desperate. There were violent things that happened. A lot of people that I talked to said, "Why are you down there? You know I can't visit you. It's too weird. It's too dangerous." And at the same time, there was a tribal camaraderie between all the artists that had decided that this was a great place to have a watering hole sanctuary for themselves. Los Angeles is so spread out, it doesn't have a neighborhood feeling. But I found that this area, it really felt like there was a close bond. People were constantly talking about where's the next art opening, where's the next show, which band is going to be playing, who's going to have a party, what's going to go on at what loft. There was a real connection between everyone.
There's a place called the American Hotel. It's in downtown L.A. It's like a wishing well for all the artists who live there and all their dreams to make it big in the art world or the music scene. At the American American hotel. Back in 1980, it was understood. They lived painters, musicians, homeless in the neighborhood. And beneath the hotel was a punk rock club. It was called Al's Bar, an underground hub. At the American Hotel, well, people came from miles around to rock and roll with artists downtown. Bohemians on the left and right. One thing remained all through the night. At the American Hotel, well, they nailed up an airplane to the hotel wall. Just the same as inside, there were no rules at all. So many crazy stories, so many crazy guests. A bohemian barn, simply the best. At the American Hotel, that's right, the American Hotel.
I met this girl at Al's Bar. I'd been here from 1982 to about 1998, and she convinced me to leave. I said, you know, I really care for this girl, and so we gave it a whirl, and we moved to Elysian Valley, right by the river. It's called Frogtown. She found a little house that had a garage, and it had a backyard, and she had 2 dogs. And I really thought, this isn't me. I can't believe it, but I would rather be in a hotel room downtown. I'm an urban guy. I had to be where I could hear sirens, gunshots, cars squealing, and people yelling, and then I felt comfortable. So when she and I parted, I thought, I'm gonna move back downtown, but there were no rooms at the American, so I went to the Sogo Hotel, which was formerly pretty much there for the Japanese community. It was a cheap rent situation, again with single rooms, and again with bathrooms on either side. But there was a kitchen and a lobby, so it was a lot more civilized and a lot more quiet and a lot more boring. I definitely felt out of the loop. Al's Bar and the American Hotel was like the hotbed of excitement. And I was on this little satellite, even though it was only 2 blocks away. It felt like I was in Riverside. I stayed at the Sogo for a few years. And then I got a room here on the top floor, the 4th floor. And I've only lived on the 4th floor out of all the hotel floors. In the old days, I could look out my window and see who was in line for whatever show. But by this time when I moved back, Al's Bar had already closed. Now I was on the side facing downtown. And I had my bed set up right by the window, which I do to this day. And I look out over downtown, and it's back to that childhood fantasy of living in a hotel overlooking an urban metropolis. One thing that ties everything together, that still makes downtown downtown, are the old buildings. You see the patina, the old brick. You were surrounded by these old urban dinosaurs. You get this ambiance, this real noir world, because it is from another time, from an old L.A. There's something about it, it just sort of embraces you. You feel like you're in a Walt Disney ride, and it's called the Downtown L.A. Arts District Ride.
Cut.